Welcome, everyone, to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, but you can call me Wolf. That's what my friends call me. And if you're tuning into this podcast, hopefully you're a friend. But if you're not, oh well, too bad for you.
You're still here anyway, and you're not going anywhere. You're going to stay till the end of the episode.
Stalking us like a
we
weirdo.
caught you.
And then you're going to act like, oh, I don't ever listen to y'all. Yeah, you do. Cause
I hate that guy.
You're falling for our trap card.
But most people are cool, man. So here what we got going on. Paranormal Roundtable. For you, those of you who listen to us on Spotify and think that we all like vanished into another dimension, well, we've returned. For those of you who know better and actually went and started listening to us on YouTube and Rumble, yeah, we're still around. Because somebody was like on the Facebook group, and they're like, "Where are they? Where have they gone?" And people were like,
"I haven't released an episode in months." We're like, "Dude, we've been on YouTube, like doing live stream after live stream after live stream. What are you talking about?"
And then somebody was like, she got on there and told them, she's like, "They just did one yesterday."
Yeah.
It's on YouTube. And the guy's like, "Oh, that'll never work. I don't know. I don't know how to work that newfangled tube."
Yeah.
You know, so they're just, yeah, whatever. So if you're not listening to us on YouTube, well, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. We just did, as of this episode yesterday, we interviewed L.A. Marzulli.
Yep.
As of the recording of this. Okay. And hopefully this will be dropping on Tuesday. If it does, then that means that we actually interviewed him again on YouTube as part 2. But it hasn't happened yet, but it will. But as of the recording, yeah, so anyway, if that makes sense. So that we got a lot of work we're doing. We've done a lot of work, and we're doing a lot of work. And so tonight, we're going to start something that's probably going to happen every Tuesday. And I got to say, you know, we all kind of came up with it together as a team. It was myself and Tony and Anthony here. And we decided we're going to do this thing kind of a paranormal potluck into the unknown every Tuesday.
Yeah. Where
we just go over multiple different encounters. You know, we're not going to do just one type of thing on Tuesday. If you want to hear like the Black Pyramid prophecies, that was one that we did recently. Go and listen on YouTube. I mean, it's there, you know, and you know, we literally just talked about it. There was another one, Dogman from the Inner Earth. That we did that was on YouTube. Go look at the thumbnails. You'll see them. They're there. And those are people's stories that are kind of all encompassing. But Tuesday, we're going to kind of reserve it for kind of jumping around a little bit, you know, and doing different stuff. So that being said, you know, don't forget, we have the Patreon. If you want to become a Patreon member, it's the best way to support the show. The next best way is we have a PayPal that you can donate to if you want to help. We do that because we want to keep the show free. We want to be able to, through donors, people that help us, we're able to keep it from having to put it behind a paywall. A lot of people do this members-only paywall thing. I don't do that. The only thing for the members that we do is you're entered into a giveaway on Friday or Sunday. Typically, it'll be those days, and you can win all kinds of different prizes that we give away. We do at least 3 on those nights. So Saturday now we're doing open lines, which the last 2 weeks has been really, really a big hit. We've had a lot of people come and tell their stories straight off the cuff on Saturdays. We're no longer doing the UAP thing. The UAP thing was fun while it lasted, and it went on way longer than we thought it would. Months and months and months, and it was the alien agenda thing, whatever. But now we're moved on to open lines on.
Yeah, people have been asking for it for a while. So
yeah, so here now we have the open lines. Tuesday is this right here, and then there'll be other sporadic interviews that I'll be doing throughout the weeks. So without further ado, let's talk about what we got to talk about. Is there anything else I need to say? I don't know.
No, let's get into it.
Let's get into it. If you want more news about the show, I would say go watch the YouTube channel. And then we're going to be doing a little bit of work on Rumble. We are going to return to Rumble on Thursday night. That's going to happen real soon. Maybe not this week, but the week after. So we're going to be doing like this hour-long thing on Rumble. Okay, and that's going to be right before Blondes and Booze comes on. I think they come on at 8, right? So on Thursday night, it's not going to be, it might be sporadic at first, but it's going to be a Thursday show, and we're going to do that on Rumble. Okay. So that being said, we got a bunch of stuff lined up throughout the week. So Paranormal Roundtable is going to be coming at you. And remember, I'm doing all this while also running my business. And so you're welcome. Okay. I'm just saying. Because people on YouTube are the real heroes. So
I struggle for your benefit.
I don't know how, but yes, we are heroes. Not all heroes wear capes. I do. It was once a curtain. I took it and I cut it and I put an S on the back of it for stupid, and I wear it and I jump around in cowboy boots and underwear.
I thought I was wearing a cape, but I just had some toilet paper stuck to my pants.
It's a fashion statement. It's going to catch on.
That's actually a story that we talked about. A guy had gone into a house. We talked about it on Sunday.
Yeah.
And it was crazy, man. And go listen to that episode. It was crazy. The guy ended up getting chased out of there, attacked by these weird creatures that I don't know what they were. They're like elves with tails. I don't know.
Yeah, like primate, elf-looking
things. Reptiles. So what ended up happening, the guy got chased out of there, and he meets this guy at the convenience store who's like, yeah, I've seen him too, like right around the corner from there. So go check that out, man. But a guy literally in his underwear and in some boots came out and shot at one of these things. Not to laugh at JJ's story, but like, because I know JJ in real life. But he went through a rough period and he was homeless. And it was horrible. He went into a house and, well, there was something in there. But go check it out. That was on Sunday, folks. So without further ado, we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about tonight. We got a few things. Which one do we want to start off with? We talked about them before the show. What do y'all want to?
I like to start off with the giant spider one.
Yeah, me and Anthony are
come out the gate strong.
All right, good. We'll talk about that one then. Fine. The gross, weird, creepy, whatever it is thing.
No, we said giant spider, not Anthony.
Oh my gosh, here we go.
Wow. Well, you're not like giant at all. You're tiny, minuscule.
I think you said gross.
Minuscule. That's a good word.
There's a lot of descriptions there that just resonated with you.
You and your angel hair arms.
I felt like
angel hair arms. Oh God, I can feel the love, guys. All right, so what ended up happening with this guy? He's living in Venezuela. He's from Venezuela. He hasn't been there in like years and years. He left there 17 years ago. But he writes me and he says, "Hey, I like your show. My girlfriend turned me on to the show, and I've really enjoyed." His name's Christopher, and she turned me on to the show. And it's kind of funny. Her name is Christina, and he's Christopher. So but she's from Mexico and he's from Venezuela. But she has been here for a long time. She's a dental hygienist. Shout out to her. And so she told him, she's like, there's a guy that's got a show and he's talked about these giant spiders. And he's like, well, I got a story. So he sends me this email, and it was crazy. When he was like 9 years old, him and his little brother and his little sister were outside playing with some neighborhood kids. And he goes, we didn't have baseball bats. And he goes, we were playing with sticks. We played stickball, And he goes, and we didn't have a ball. We had a rock. And so, we found a really good smooth rock that was kind of halfway, whatever. Yeah. He goes, but then he goes, you don't even have gloves. One person had a glove. Uh-huh. The ball, which is a rock, gets hit. It comes screaming at you. Oh. He's like, you're more likely to get out of the way than to try to catch the son of a gun. So he's over here, playing stickball with his, or stick rock with his friends, the neighborhood kids. And, there's this kind of a storage shed. It's like a carport / storage, but it was really just full of junk. And he said that it was like, people hadn't gone in there in years. And he said that one time, it was at the neighbor's house. He said that one time his friend, Federico, had told him to help him look for some of his action figures in there. And he said they moved like one thing and all these like spiders and stuff went crawling around. And he's like, nah, man, I'm good. I'm not going to, we're not going to do that. He tells him, help me move this stuff. And of course he's like, I see that. And I'm like, I'm good. Another time he said he saw a really large snake like slithering around the back of the property behind that pile of junk. So he was like, no way, man. And so he said that it was no surprise that something happened whenever he hit the rock and it like smacked really hard into the side of the wall. He said they see something move. And he said, of course, in Venezuela, there's a lot of poor people. I mean, and of course this shed, it's made of it has tin over it with plywood behind it, right? And he said that he hits this tin and they see these two, what look like limbs of something come down almost like two long sticks below the bottom of the tin that's peeling. And his sister was like, "Ooh, what is that?" And he said that they all kind of went over there to look. He goes, and underneath the tin is a spider. He said that I can only describe it as being about the size of a small dog. And he goes, and I'm not talking about a Chihuahua either, but a small to mid-sized dog,
Yeah.
And so we started talking about it, and he said, like a large puppy.
Like Beanie?
Of a large dog. It's like a puppy.
Like the size of Beanie, maybe?
Yeah, the way he described it, yeah, because he said that, you translate the centimeters to feet, and it was about 2 feet with from leg to legs, but the body wasn't, but the feet with the arms of it, the eight limbs. I'm over here, arms, legs. The limbs would have been about 2 feet around. He said that it was, and he said, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not joking. And he said that, of course, us being little bad kids, he said, my friend goes inside and gets hairspray and a match and starts kind of trying to burn it. And then it didn't balk at all. It just jumped out of the thing and started kind of running around toward his friend in the grass. And his friend kept trying to burn it, and it just kept rearing up and going toward him. And he said it didn't look like a tarantula. You know how tarantulas, they're kind
very
of
thick.
Yeah. He said this thing had skinnier legs and a bigger, longer body, and you could see these humongous fangs on it. And he said it was a weird color. The color on it, because he said they lived in an area that was very lush green area. And he said that this thing had greenish stripes on it. It could blend in on the ground. He goes, you could see that it was blending in with the ground. And he's like, and I've never seen anything like it in my life, dude. He goes, and I lived in Venezuela, for a long time, until I was 18 years old. He goes, and I moved. And he's like, and he goes, I've been living here for a long time, 17 years, and he's 35. Never saw anything like it, before or since. And he said that what was crazy, now there's more to the story. And he says that this thing runs off into the street. All the kids start throwing rocks at it. And eventually one of the kids gets brave enough to try to stomp on it. When he does, it just latches onto his foot. And it did it so fast, he said that it bit through the bottom of his shoe. And luckily it barely pierced his bottom of his foot. And the kid started screaming, and he said this thing had these big old fangs. And he said that he tried to shake it loose, but while it was trying to bite into his foot, one of the kids, who was a little girl, very brave, she grabs one of the sticks that they were playing with and just starts whacking it until it starts to crawl off. And then eventually one of the kids drops a big rock on it and splats it everywhere. And so they went and they told their parents, they got them, and then there's all these adults that came out and were looking at it and taking pictures of it. And he said, but at that point, though, it just looked like a smushed pile of goo, He said there was all this white goo inside of it. And he said that it was humongous. So fast forward about a year or two later, he said that he had never seen one again or since. But he said that one of his neighbors, they were sitting around playing dominoes, and it was at a birthday party, and everybody was getting drunk and playing dominoes. That's what you do at a kid's birthday party, is get smashed,
Everybody knows that.
Everybody knows that. So what else is there to do? Just get smashed, right? Yeah. It's not fun.
Just an excuse
fun
to
watching
drink.
Kids hit pinatas. Let's just get smashed. So they're over there playing dominoes, and one of the older people says, they killed a spider, a big spider that was underneath the table, because Venezuela, there's a bunch of them, And he said, I once killed a spider, and he put his hands up 2 feet around, and everybody was like, ay, mentiras, no, that you didn't do that, pendejo, liar, whatever. And he spoke up, and he said, me and my dad said, no. And they started talking about the incident that happened. But this guy, he said, dude, he goes, no, for real. He said it was eating a dog.
Oh,
it was literally, and it was pulling this small dog that was pretty much already gone. And he said it was pulling it down under into the underground. It was like Like there was a giant hole and it came out of it and it was pulling it down in there. So he poured gasoline. Now, you know that, Anthony, that your dad's had to do that because your yard was infested with tarantulas.
Yeah, they hate gasoline.
Yeah, Taylor is
everything hates gasoline.
Full of tarantulas. I mean, they're just, your yard becomes infested with them. I mean, they'll be hopping around all over your yard. You have to get rid of them.
They'll charge at you too.
Yeah, and some of them are, people say they're not aggressive. They're shy creatures, whatever. Go to Taylor.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay? They're not shy. They jump at you. So
we came inside one time and one was crawling on top of the recliner.
Yeah, it don't matter.
Yeah.
And Taylor, if you're living in Taylor, dude, you're going to get tarantulas in your house. We killed them in the bathtub. They're all over the place, man. And thank God, because I don't live in Taylor anymore. But it's like that black land, that soil.
Yeah,
it's so conducive to them, and it's tarantula season right now. So, anyways, this thing was not like a tarantula. And when the guy described the spider, he was like, "I remember." He's like, I heard it. He goes, and it was like Christopher was like, that was the exact same thing that I saw. Exact same thing. He goes, the same kind of species or whatever. And he said that when he poured the gasoline down the hole, he was expecting it to come running out and not like it, whatever. He goes, it just kept going down, down, down. Like you could hear it like running. So this thing must have been way, way down deep in the earth. So what he did was, this guy claims that he took a spade and started going over the top of that hole, and it just kind of collapsed down in. And then 2, 3, then 4, then 5 of these big spiders. Most of them, though, were only about the size of a fist. The body was, and then they had these big long legs. And he said that there was this like really big one. It must have been like the mother or whatever. And they were all like eating that dog, like chewing on it. And he said that when he saw that, he went and he threw a match, and then as they started to catch on fire, they ran all over his yard and started to burn it up because they were so large. And then he said that he like went around like literally beating them with a baseball bat. I guess he was one of the lucky people who could afford one, and good old communism. So he went and he was beating it with a bat, the different spiders or whatever. And so he said that he got rid of them, the large one, but then he said that what he discovered down in that giant hole was more bones, like animals that had been, like small animals, like squirrel bones and other types of mammals that had been, even birds, that had been caught by this spider. And so he said that the stories down there in Venezuela, he goes, there's more stories. He goes, I was working at a bodega down there, when I was young, and he goes, the shopkeeper, when I told him my story, it was close to Halloween, and everybody was talking about, whatever, the weird stories or whatever. And he said that, it's not celebrated as big down there as it is up here. Mm-hmm. He's like, but people do, like observe like, oh, that's the type of year where everything is creepy and weird and whatever. And he said, so we were talking about it, and this guy says, he's like, they had this giant spider like prop, like right there on the counter. And he said that the guy told him, he goes, I was 15 years old, and this guy told me, he says, man, those are real. He's like, here in Venezuela, there's a lot of these big species of spiders. And he says, dude, that he began to tell him a story about one time when he was riding his horse, and his horse freaked out and almost threw him off because there was this giant spider that was crossing the pasture. And he said that the spider was the size of like a dog. The guy told him that story. And he says, I probably never would have even thought about it, or it wouldn't even have come up if I hadn't, seen what I seen, and the guy that was telling the story of the spider at the big pachanga, he probably would have just been thought of as a crazy old kook, but because I saw this, me and the kids in the neighborhood saw this, he goes, I know now that these things exist. Now he asked me why it would be more common for something to be that large. And I said, well, Venezuela's full of jungles. And it's got more oxygen in that area. I mean, so people talk about seeing these things in the rainforest all the time, or in the Congo. You get stories of these things. I personally also believe that they could come from the inner earth. That's my opinion. I've had people talk to me about being taken to places like the inner earth, and they'll see giant spiders roaming around in these caves. Mm-hmm. And so
what's interesting about spiders is that it's not just oxygen that they need, because it's their actual makeup that prevents them from growing any bigger. it has to do with their veins. So if these things are getting that big and like, you know, they were already showing like, unlike tarantulas who have to be, you know, thicker in order to support their body, these things actually have like they would have to have like an actual different biology from like regular spiders. And that would explain why some of their behaviors are so bizarre. But, and then also their coloring too. So, I mean, but I think people seem to forget, like, the insect world is probably one of the scariest because they've had so many years to practice tactics of just killing each other. So any creature that grows up to a certain size, that's an insect, becomes like a very prolific hunter, because that's all the insect world is just one creature hunting another. So I think like spiders or insects in general, that get too big, scare the crap out of me, because I know how they are when they're small.
Yeah, it's just constant warfare.
Mm-hmm.
Like
and the most brutal warfare too. Like it's
like Warhammer, you know.
Yeah, it's just no holds bar.
The mantis creatures too.
Mantis, all of them.
All of them. They're just centipedes. I was working out by the lake, me and my brother, and we saw one of the gnarliest centipedes. It was probably over a foot long.
Ugh.
It was gigantic, dude. And they tried to attack D. Well, you remember when we were out there, you saw that big old tarantula out there.
Yeah.
They probably eat each other, you know. Moving on from that, so I got a friend who lives, let's go to Hong Kong, okay? I got a friend who lives in Hong Kong, and he messaged me not too long ago. He apparently had just got out of incarceration. He was involved in some protests and some things that went on there. So it's a scary time we're living in. But he wanted to give me this story, and he said, just in case I end up going back to jail, you know, he's like, here's a story for you. His girlfriend's dad told him a story, and now there's a story that goes back a long ways, and in Hong Kong, for whatever reason, it's really a very common theme, and it is called the Jiangshi. Now, the Jiangshi is called the hopping ghost or the vampire ghost. And his, I guess this is his fiance now, this is his future father-in-law, told him a story of when he was an 11-year-old child who he saw the Jiangshi. Now, he said that what this is it's not like you would think. It's not like, it's called the hopping ghost. It's not like it just hops around. It's because it's stiff. It's like a corpse. It's like a reanimated corpse. But what's even weirder about it is there's all kinds of different ways and legends and stories, and not just in Hong Kong, but in that whole region of how this comes to be and how it is what it is and why it does what it does. One of the most commonly held beliefs, it's an old Chinese belief, is that you practice sorcery or you do black magic, you come back, and that is your punishment right there. You have to live as this being, and you have to look for blood. Because you committed sin in life, you're going to have to pay. And so you become like this animated corpse that roams around in search of living blood. Now, that is very much the whole crux of the vampire tradition, right? But the reason that it hops around the way it does is because its joints don't work right. That's the story. And so it kind of moves, like kind of sways side to side because it can't bend its arms and legs because it's basically rigor mortis, right? And then this thing, in order for it to do anything, it kind of has to hop it can't, otherwise it waddles back and forth. And it wears like these old time clothes, like robes and stuff that haven't been seen since the 18th century. That's kind of how it dresses, you know. Well, here's the weird thing. Like when they moved into this house when they were kids, and they were up on the 4th floor, and it's weird because it's like a house. It's not like an apartment. It's like an entire house. Like one entire floor is your house, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and so, but it's like that they live like, and then they're like 2 townhomes stacked on top of each other. So they would walk up these stairs to get to their door, and then there's like one level. Then there's like, so it's like 2 2-story houses because housing is so It's like nobody has a house in Hong Kong. It's
Yeah.
one of the most expensive places in the world to live. And people don't realize that. It's even more expensive than New York.
Wow.
Yeah. And so anyway, he's like, so our house was on top of another house. And he's like, and so the people that lived down below us, they were always arguing and fighting. And there was all kinds of weird stuff going on. There were all kinds of weird people coming and going. And then one day they find the guy dead, the guy that lived below them. And the wife was arrested for his murder. She swore to her innocence, and but she was eventually put on trial. But then she was released because there was no evidence to say that she had killed this guy. But she had been going around telling people that she wished he would die. So then he drops dead, and they're like, "Yeah, you're the prime suspect." He said that he doesn't know if this is what caused the haunting or whatever, but shortly after his death, and he said it didn't happen immediately. It was like a couple weeks. Weird stuff started happening. He said that one day his mother was drinking tea, and the glass just shattered, and it was like a little ceramic teacup, whatever.
Yeah.
Another time there was like a saucer cup or a cup on a saucer, and the saucer just began to shake and vibrate, and then it spun out from underneath the teacup, and that fell over. So it led his mom and dad, in particular his dad, kind of made a joke about it, saying, "Oh, it was, had to be, like the tea said, it's haunted," jokingly, whatever, right? And so this is, and now this would have been his girlfriend's grandfather that was teasing her dad. Her dad was a kid, right? And so he was like, he said, "This is crazy, man. This guy dies, and now all this stuff starts happening." Well, his girlfriend's dad, his dad was not a superstitious man, and he was a hardworking guy. And he worked all the time, and he said, "We're not going to entertain the idea that there's some ghost, right?" Well, then a couple days later, he hears his mother screaming in the bedroom, and his dad was working until late that night. And he said he runs into the bedroom with his younger brother, and they see this. The only way he could describe it was like this black mass, like rolling around on the bed, trying to grab his mother. And they were like these sort of like arms, as he called them, but they were more like tentacles with little phalanges on the end, trying to grab her. And she was like trying to get loose. And it was like weird. He goes, it was like some invisible force was keeping her on the bed. And so finally it got loose, and they screamed and yelled and whatever. And they started saying all these prayers, and eventually it let go, and this thing kind of sunk into the bed. So then she went to her husband and said, "Look, there's something going on. I don't want to deal with this. We need to get the hell out of this house." And, she was very, like superstitious, where he was not. It was like polar opposites. And he said, "Well, this is happening to you because you believe in it." He's like, and then the next thing that happened, like he was in the kitchen with his mother, and like all the cabinets began opening and closing at one time. And he said it didn't go like on and on, but it was just like real quick. They were sitting there, and then it was just bang, 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 and then it stopped. And then he said that, he goes, at that point, he goes, me and my brother were just living in terror of whatever the hell was going to come next. And he said that eventually it led to his brother complaining. His brother was a couple years younger than him, that something was coming into the room at night when he was trying to sleep, and it was biting him. And he showed his brother, and he said that there were bite marks on his chest, on the back of his shoulder, on his foot, and on his leg. And he said that eventually, he said, I woke up and I had like what looked like a bite mark, the human-like bite mark, but with like pronounced puncture wounds of like canine teeth or whatever on my arm. And he said, so I decided, one night I was going to stay up, because I was just sick and tired of having these weird dreams. I kept having these dreams of this weird, like ghoulish looking thing coming into the room. And he goes, and I thought it was just a dream. It was just dreams, right? And he said, eventually I stayed up and I waited and I watched. And he goes, and one of the ways that you can catch the hopping ghost is they put a bowl of water down in front of the door. So when it comes into your room, it's clumsy because it can't, whatever. So it trips over the water. He goes, well, I learned that if this was the hopping ghost, most of the stories were actually bullcrap. He's like, This thing came into the room, floated into the room. The water was not even an obstacle at all. It just went around it. He's like, but I observed it. He goes, and I watched it. He goes, and for night after night after night, I was staying up. And he goes, and I wasn't in school at that time. We were off from school. And so I was like sitting there watching this thing. And he goes, I was staring at it, with my head just above the covers. He goes, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to scream. He goes, and it floated over to my brother. And immediately, like, it bent down like this weird angle. It did not bend its knees. He said it just bent itself at the waist and began to like bite his feet. He goes, and my brother just started to kind of kick and twitch, but didn't really like, he didn't wake up and protest and scream and yell or whatever. It was like he wasn't even aware that he was being attacked. Now, if you know anything about the vampire bat, it actually does that. Like, it actually will sit there and bite a cow or a horse.
Its saliva has like a numbing tendency.
It stops, it numbs it in, then it has this agent that stops your blood from coagulating. So it just keeps flowing, and it drinks its fill, and it flies away, and the animal doesn't even know that it's been bit. So it's really crazy. So he says this thing maybe was the same way. He goes, I don't know. He's like, but I observed it like biting my brother's feet. And I was just like, I was in shock and in terror, and I wanted to scream. He goes, and finally, he goes, my brother began to like kind of whimper and make this noise like it was hurting him, but he wasn't waking up. He goes, and so I grabbed a pillow and tossed it at this ghoul. He goes, and this thing's head just like turned real quick toward me, like, he goes, and it just like looked real fast. And it was like this real weird, like very, like quick, very deliberate movement, like its head just kind of turned toward him. And he said he saw this yellow eyes with these black slits in the middle of them. And he said that this thing's nose was like, there was no nose. It was like the nose was cut off, kind of like Michael Jackson. And he said that this thing had this big oversized mouth full of fangs. And so it just began to just glide over to him. And the next thing you know, it's like grabbing his leg and trying to bite his leg. He goes, and when I went to scream, he said this thing moved its hand, lifted it up, and like I couldn't make any noise. And he goes, the whole time I was like with my mouth open, trying to talk, trying to scream, and nothing was coming out. There was no sound at all. He's like, and this pale, kind of yellowish looking, like decaying, rotting looking thing, like just began to like drink my blood right in front of me. I could not stop it. There was nothing I could do. And it was right out of my left calf. And he said, I was sitting there just staring at it in horror. And then he goes, and then I began to feel drowsy, and I tried to fight it, but I couldn't stay awake, and I fell to sleep. He said, the next day I have this like bruise on my leg, and there's this bite marks, and this thing, it was wearing a red robe. And he said that it was just the most bizarre looking creature ever. And he said that it had this little cap on its head with like these like braids, like these like ponytails on either side of its head, right? And he said that about 2 weeks after the initial attack, when it started happening regularly to him, and his brother both, he said, I'm pretty sure at this point, that we were both anemic, like this thing had been draining our blood. Yeah. He goes, and we were falling asleep and we couldn't stay awake, and our parents were getting worried. And we kept telling our parents that there was this creature that was coming into our rooms. Finally, his dad's brother comes to visit, and his dad's brother's uncle tells him, he goes, that's a hopping ghost. He's like, you need to get rid of that thing. He goes, that thing, he goes, did something happen? And they said, yeah, there was a guy that was murdered downstairs. And he goes, oh no. He said that, according to the uncle who knew about this tradition, whatever, he said he told his brother, which would have been, this guy's, the guy that told me the story, it would have been his girlfriend's dad, that would have been his uncle. But he told his dad, he said, dude, you don't remember when we dealt with one of these before? And so all this time, this guy that was poo-pooing all this and making fun of it, he was attacked by one when he was a kid. And he said, you don't remember when we lived on the other side of town and we had one of these and our dad had to get rid of it. Well, he didn't remember it. And he says, yeah, because it would make it to where we couldn't scream. We couldn't make any noise. And apparently these things, like, I guess they follow like a bloodline or a lineage. They can, right? And so the death of someone is not necessarily that person, whatever, that does it. If somebody is practicing any kind of anything at all, they can latch onto that. And apparently the soul of the deceased person can attract them, because they don't only attack the living, they attack the newly deceased too. So this thing may have been lying dormant, you know, according to what this guy was saying. And eventually when that guy died, you know, it gave him energy, right? Now, if this dude was an evil person when he died, the hopping ghost or this demonic vampiric entity may have, that's why they assume the visage of a corpse. What this thing is doing is it's mimicking the dead. It's not really a dead person. It's taking on that as like an avatar, sort of like, you know, using its newly, like when you die, the people don't understand this, like, according to this tradition here, I'm not saying I believe this, but that's one of the theories, is that you go into this kind of intermediate state where you still look human, but you're like a wisp, right? That particular state of being is not a permanent state. That is not who you are. That's not really what you are. That's not your essence. That's your essence, but that's not, you don't stay that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this thing, what it does is it takes on the characteristics of this human, that this newly departed. It's kind of confusing, I know. But what it does is it imitates it. So it has to actually act kind of and move around and function like a corpse. And he said that he found this out from studying at the temple with the Buddhist shamans. They actually taught him what the hopping ghosts truly were. And that is one theory that people have posed, you know, that could be what they're doing. And so the only way, though, that would happen is if somebody is, like I've said before, in my personal opinion, you die and you're not in Christ. Now, most people in Hong Kong are not necessarily Christian. Right. So these people were not Christian. There are a lot of Christians there, but these people were not Christian. And they really weren't Buddhists either. They were just kind of secular. And so he said that his brother, though, was very much into Buddhism, and he did study the teachings of Christ. So his brother, being Buddhist kind of by philosophy and by religious-wise, he's Christian, right? Anyways, this guy, this guy's dad's brother, his uncle, told him, he says, you know, I've been studying at the temple and you know, and I've done a lot of work, you know, and he goes, and I believe that this thing, what it does is it's attracted to the energy of someone who dies, and it takes that person's soul, kind of like it takes the energy from that person. You know what I mean? It weakens them, you know, because that person was either bad or they died and they were lost, you know? So it feeds on the souls of those in purgatory, and then it assumes the somewhat physical abilities of a corpse. But it can't go beyond that unless it begins to drink blood. Once it drinks blood, then it begins to be able to move around, and it doesn't have to hop or whatever. It can actually just move around, you know, like a normal being, like, you know, entity, whatever. And the more blood it drinks, the more powerful it becomes. So that's what happened with this thing. He said eventually, he was walking in the hallway, and he goes, this thing grabbed me in broad daylight in the middle of the day. He goes, and it grabbed me and pulled me into the bathroom. He goes, and I went to swipe at it, and I knocked its goofy little cap off of its head. He's like, and those braids, that hair on the side of it wasn't even real hair. It's just something that's attached to its weird little cap. He goes, and the head of it looked like a round, bald-headed, like weird whatever, and it had these kind of weird-looking ears that were almost bat-like, and it had this weird little pudgy face, and you could see it was like bloated, and its breath smelled like rot. He goes, and you could tell that it was like full of our blood. It had been drinking, you know? And he said that this thing tried to feed on me right there in the bathroom, and he said that it looked like, you know, and so this is what he told me. He's like, have you ever seen the Lord of the Rings movies with the pale orc? And I said, yeah. He said the head of it looked like that. Oh, you know, gross. It was so gross and so nasty. And he goes that this thing, it was bald-headed. It had no hair. And he said that I literally, one of the crosses that my my dad's brother had given us. He's like, I took it and I jabbed at it, tried to hit it in the eye, and I got it right above the eye, but its flesh was soft and kind of like the way he described it. He said, like a foam. And I said, yeah, I've heard this before. There's like this soft flesh. It's like this like Nerf ball kind of weird. And he said that the cross went and stuck into its head, and it reached up and was trying to pull it out. And he goes, but the hands were starting to not be able to grasp anything. And he said that it was weird, like it was trying to hold on to me. He goes, but I could see that the hands were starting to look transparent, and that it kind of backed off into the shadows and was gone. And he goes, and I heard this kind of like weird coughing noise. And he said that after that, everything kind of chilled out. He goes, and I put the crosses up everywhere. He goes, and I hung these, and now this is going to sound weird because people in the West don't know this, but swastikas, they're not what you think they are. Like, they're Buddhist symbols, and people use them in Buddhism. But he said that he hung them up everywhere along with the crosses, and the thing eventually just went away. And he goes, and I never saw it again. He's like, but I'm pretty sure from the descriptions that my uncle gave, it was the exact same entity. And he said that he thinks, and this is what I kind of tend to believe too, was the death of that man, whatever reason or however he died, this thing was there, kind of like attached itself to his dad. And whenever that guy died, it used the energy from that released by that soul, because that guy probably died outside of the, redemption, and so he was able to use it and feed off of his soul to manifest itself again into our world. And then to stay in our world, it was drinking blood. Strange story. I know it's a weird thing, man. When you look at the West and you look at all the weird stories that you get in the West and all the weird things that come out of the West, it pales in comparison to the weird entities that you hear about from the Levant all the way to the Far East.
Yeah.
I mean, they have some weird stuff, dude. Weird, wacky, wild stuff. The demons in the Far East and the ones in India. Mm-hmm. I mean, the stuff of nightmare. It's nightmare fuel, Yeah. So, yeah. Any questions about that? What do you guys think of that?
It's weird because, I'm quite familiar with Jiangxis, and the stories are the when you watch them in movies, they're very kind of goofy looking. But with some of the stuff you said, makes a lot of sense to me because it's often in TV shows or in a lot of entertainment, they're used as pawns, maybe more to say, by evil sorcerers or evil mystics. And the way they do it is that if you put a talisman on their forehead, you kind of contain them. But if you take the talisman off, they go ballistic. So it's it seems like it makes a lot of sense that maybe they are kind of spirits or souls of that kind of feed on the deceased. And if you are able to lock them in place, you can kind of control them, because it seems like as soon as he put that cross on, it was disappearing or fading away from obviously losing power of some sort. But it might be that you maybe that's where they became known as pawns or puppets, basically, to be used by the evil people in these movies. But yeah, I guess finding the real description and kind of figuring out what it does is a lot more terrifying than anything you see on a movie. I will say this, and kind of going off of what you said, one of the things that Serge said, that's my friend, he said that his girlfriend's dad told him that his uncle had told him that they found out that the original Jiangxi that had attacked them as a child, which he thinks was the same one, was sent there by a warlock. Which would be called a warlock it was a dark shaman. We would know it as a warlock in this, and it was literally sent to them because of a business deal gone bad with their dad. And so he sent that thing there. He went to, I guess his business partner was evil, and he went to this warlock and had this thing sicked on them. And so it began to feed on not only his parents, but also the children, and they were all getting sick. And so they went to the temple, and the people of the temple said, "You have a Jiangxi."
and you have to break its power. And they did. But for some reason, his dad, the guy's dad, didn't have a memory of it.
Would he just block it out, or as a kid, or
so it would have been actually it would have been his girlfriend's dad. It would have been that guy's grandfather, which would have been his girlfriend's great grandfather. It was him that had originally, he had
the bad business.
Yeah, he had the thing that attacked him originally. It would have been him, and then his children were affected, and then of course, later on it affected his girlfriend's dad, who he was just a kid himself, because and he thinks it had something to do with that guy dying downstairs, but which gave it life again. It's a very weird thing, man. Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's interesting that like the more blood that it consumed, the more coordinated it was. You hear that phrase, the blood is the life. It's like the more blood this thing drank, the more alive literally it was. Like the more alive in the physical world it became. And for some reason that there seems to be some sort of like they're very covetous of like life in the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know why. It's like, why do you want to be here? Well, I guess because where they're at on the astral, spiritual plane, whatever you want to call it, is a very negative place. Maybe they're desperate to just escape their circumstances,
I would look at it like a predator. I mean, why would you hunt with sharks when there's a tub full of minnows?
Bull sharks will literally go and birth in the shallows, in the brackish water, to avoid the large predators.
Yeah, I mean, it's common sense. I think it's like if you want to avoid the bigger monsters out there, you kind of join where the prey
they want to come to the kindergarten.
It's like, what is it, Galapagos Island? There's not a single predator on there, so every animal in there was like very weird about like, they're all kind of just friendly, or they just never really had like that defensive, they never developed defensive mechanisms. So then when someone introduced like a predator animal, it just started destroying the environment.
Yeah.
So like that's what they're trying to do here. They're just predator animals trying to enter.
Yeah, it's just a very base whatever. Yeah. So anyway, that's the story that was given to me of the.
I think Asian vampires are some of the weirdest stories or mythologies because not only like the Jiangxi, but there's also one where it's just a head. It's a woman.
Yeah, Filipino.
Yeah, who detaches her head, and that head goes around and will either attack pregnant women or it's one of the other pregnant women or children. But yeah, can you imagine just a vampire head?
Well, the
with long hair
can also
around.
Just detach its lower body from its upper body.
That one's weird. And there's also one that I think like targets its pregnant women and like actually goes after the fetuses inside them. So like it has like a long like weird mouth
proboscis,
kind of thing where it hooks up into the belly button.
Yeah, and
I mean, if you're gonna drink blood though, like what is the like why human blood as opposed to animals? I mean, it would seem like if you're going for the low hanging fruit, for the easiest target or meal, whatever, that I mean, you could drink your fill all day with animals. I mean, why target human beings specifically?
It might be that they do. It's like working out. You can only train your muscles so far before you eventually have to push it with something new. You have to hit a new exercise. You have to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But like, what makes the human blood so much more potent or appealing? Like physically, what is it?
I like if we think about it, like for a dog, man. For instance, let's say this is just theories on theories, but let's say rake is their standard like default form, and they have to go around eating or drinking blood to turn into different creatures. Maybe if they ate a bunch of wolves, they would turn into these humanoid werewolves. But I think eventually like that would you would need something better to sustain that form. Like as you get better, you're going to need bigger prey. And humans have dominated this earth. It's plain and simple. We have complete control over it. I mean,
we don't have complete control over it.
I mean, the areas we don't really go to aren't really
though.
areas that humans, really have a lot of access to. So it's not a huge issue there.
If these things take the form of the living beings that they consume, eventually they kind of would have to work their way up to human beings, I guess, to take a more humanoid, like a more complete humanoid form, because I mean, we're the dominant form of life on this planet.
And if you think about it as them just adapting certain species like traits or qualities, then our intelligence has made us, be able to dominate our area. So I mean, that might be something that they're searching for or looking for. Or, if we look at it from a religious or biblical standpoint, I think that we like have that spark of God that I think they want to corrupt.
They want that.
They want to corrupt that. And I think like animals might have like wisps of it, but not like how we do.
And that the same could be said for like people talk about the Sasquatch, killing animals, but they have a special like innate hatred for humans. And then there's this handful of people that we've talked to, a handful, really, just us, that have said, oh, they're nice, they're benevolent, they're friendly. And it always starts out kind of that way. Then it turns into a nightmare. But the same thing happens with the little people too. We're about to have to cut out here, but I can give you one little short story that has, and it's a Sasquatch story. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. And this one happened, in Idaho. These people were literally gifting, this isn't a real long story, but they were gifting one of these things. And when they gifted it, eventually they had to stop gifting it because they fell on hard times, and they were literally about to lose their place that they were living at in northern Idaho, northeastern Idaho, and they were like, we could no longer give these creatures, anything. The guy had lost his job. They were elderly. Their daughter had passed away, and she was a big part of their would come and bring them food and help pay their bills. And her husband kind of went on a downward spiral and was drinking. And so, long story short, they ended up kind of destitute. And so this large male Sasquatch that they had thought that was their friend for several years had been going and grabbing food and then running back into the woods. This large, hairy, feral being that they were friendly with, it killed their rabbits, it killed their chickens, it killed their cats, their dogs, and ultimately tried to kill them. I mean, there's a whole story behind it. I can get into the whole thing of how it happened and how it went down. But that's the bottom line, is that and eventually it was trying to break into their house, and they were next.
Yeah, you're not his friend. You're just his meal ticket.
Mm-hmm. They don't care. They're not your friends. I don't give a crap how friendly they act. And these people that they think that they're just out of their depths with that. They just don't get it. And I can tell you right now, it's not something to be taken lightly. Gifting these things and any of these beings is a very bad idea. And I don't agree. I do think that they look at us in a very selfish and hateful way. They don't like us. They want to be us. They want to have what we have. And I'm still not one of these people that believes that all Bigfoot are flesh and blood monkey people running around out in the woods. I just don't believe that. I mean, these things exhibit abilities and traits that they defy the laws of physics. Now, we had talked about this the other day. What are the laws of physics? What is it?
I mean, is it necessarily that they defy the laws of physics, or is it that the laws of physics are not what we understand them to be? Mm-hmm. And maybe that they have this innate ability to, from our perspective, defy the laws of physics, but from their perspective, it may not even be something that they consciously have to try and do. It may just be like breathing to me and you. And in reality, they're completely staying within the laws of physics, and it's because our definition of physics is incorrect.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're just trying to catch up to the nature of reality, and that all these other beings are already a part of. They're witnessing it because they are, and here we are. We're just trying to keep catch up. I'm saying trying to keep up. You know what I mean? And we can't. I mean, it's like swimming upstream. These things have a very, very powerful innate ability that we don't possess. And then I think they're closer to that angelic bloodline, and it's something that we aren't,
All war is an information battle. It's basically, whoever is up top on it. And in this war against these creatures, we are severely losing that informational battle.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, even, yesterday when we talked about, we had the open lines and someone mentioned something about summoning. I mean, even no matter how many years, you could start from the very moment you are born until the very moment you are dead and practice your art, and you will still be years behind, even though the dumbest member.
Thousands of years, probably.
Thousands of years behind the dumbest member of their
of their
society.
plans.
Yeah. So, I mean, you really just, you're playing with fire and you think, you're a teacher when actually you're just a guppy messing around with sharks.
And it goes along with the vampire, with the werewolf, with the dogman, Bigfoot. I mean, it doesn't matter. These elves, these gnomes, these goblins, spirits of all kinds, these subnatured beings. It doesn't matter. You're outgunned every time. I'm going to get into a story eventually of a guy who was chased all night long around the woods up in Maine while he was hunting by a craft. And this thing was like, I mean, at any given time he was hiding, and he thought, at any given time it probably could have taken me, but it was probably just having fun.
Yeah.
These beings are so light years ahead of us. The only thing you have is Christ, man. I'm telling you, people can poo-poo that. Those of you out there who aren't a believer in Christ, I'm not trying to insult you or push, any kind of an agenda. There's no agenda here. I'm just telling you what works, folks. Get yourself right with God and Jesus. That's all I can tell you.
The proof is in the pudding.
That people call upon Christ and it works. I mean, depending on your faith. But other than that, we really don't have much of a shield. So, folks, thank you for tuning in tonight. Thank you for being a part of Paranormal Roundtable. Thank you for listening. Thank you to anyone who may have donated, whatever. Thank you to everyone who's a Patreon member. Don't forget, you get a better swag bag the more higher tier you go. And anybody that wants to help with the show, keeping it free, whatever, the people that donate, that's how we keep it that way. You can become a member, and then you get entered into the giveaways on the weekends. And then, of course, you give a donation, whatever, that helps the show to stay. Like I said, for those who can't afford it, I understand. But it helps us keep it from having to go behind a paywall, which we've committed ourselves to never do. But thank you for being a part of Paranormal Roundtable tonight. I think today is Tuesday, so you'll be good. Boomer's coming on, BMR. Go check him out. Mm-hmm. All right. Good night.